After my father's burial, my brother dragged me by the arm and whispered in my ear, "I know you killed him, and now you're going to pay." For 5 years, I lived imprisoned in my own home, paying for a crime I never committed, until the day I discovered the truth buried beneath the floorboards. Hi there, my dears. How wonderful it is to have you here with me today. You can't imagine the joy I feel being able to sit here and share another story from my life with you. Go ahead and grab your coffee, get comfortable, because today I need to share with you a story I've carried in my heart for many years. My name is Margaret Thompson, I'm 72 years old, and I live here in Asheville, North Carolina. I was born right here in this blessed mountain city with its stunning Blue Ridge views and peaceful atmosphere that soothes the soul. These days, I spend my time in my cozy kitchen, baking traditional Southern biscuits, the kind where the dough is soft and flaky, and the smell of fresh butter fills the entire house. Is there anything better than the aroma of biscuits baking in the oven? I don't think so. I'm here with flour on my hands, wearing my floral apron covered in baking stains, and the kitchen smelling of butter and warm bread. This oven here was a gift from my late father over 50 years ago. It's old and worn, but it works beautifully. Every morning I fire it up carefully, set the temperature just right, and start preparing my daily batch. I sell my biscuits at the local farmer's market, you know? It's my little income, my independence. I started doing this about 10 years ago when I realized I couldn't just sit at home waiting for life to pass me by. I learned to bake biscuits from my mother, God rest her soul. She used to say, the secret is in the dough's consistency and the love you put into it. Margaret, she'd say, food made with bitterness is no good. It sits heavy in your stomach. And she was right, you know. That's why I make each biscuit with care, thinking about the people who'll eat them, the families who'll sit at the table and share these warm treats. Now, before I continue my story, I want to make a special request to all of you watching right now, whether on your phone, computer, or TV. Tell me in the comments, what corner of America or the world are you watching me from? And also tell me, what time of day is it where you are? Are you watching me in the morning with the sun coming through your window? Or is it late afternoon after work? Or is it evening when the house gets quieter? I read every comment with care, you know? I imagine you on the other side, and it's such good company for me. So go ahead, write to me. Margaret, I'm watching you from your city, and it's time here. Let's make a chain of kindness, okay? And if you're enjoying this moment here with me, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales, because every week I come here to share the stories of this grandmother who's lived through so much in this life. Hit that notification bell too, dear, so you don't miss any new videos. But you know, my dears, today I need to tell you a difficult story. A story that completely changed my life and taught me that sometimes the most dangerous people are those sleeping in the room next door. I've been through a lot in this life. I've known pain up close, but nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to what I lived through between the ages of 19 and 24. Those were years that marked me forever, that took pieces of my soul I never fully recovered. Today, when I'm kneading my biscuit dough here, looking at the Blue Ridge Mountains through the window, I thank God for having survived. I'm grateful to be here, free, telling my story to you. Because there was a time, my dears, when I thought I'd never see the sunlight with freedom again. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and come with me on this journey. I'm going to take you to meet the Margaret of long ago, that 19-year-old girl who had the world at her feet, until the day everything collapsed. You know, my dears, to understand everything that happened to me, I need to go back to the beginning, when I was just a little girl with pigtails and scraped knees. I was born in 1953, right here in Asheville, North Carolina, in a big house with a green gate near the Biltmore Village, close to the estate. My father, Mr. Robert Thompson, was a hard-working man, owner of a small furniture manufacturing business that employed about 20 people. We weren't rich, but we didn't lack for anything either, thank God. My mother, Dorothy, was a sweet woman, one of those who woke before sunrise to prepare coffee and fresh toast for the family. She had a special way of doing things. When she walked through the house, she left a scent of lavender and fresh soap. She was an excellent baker, made cornbread, butter cookies, apple preserves, everything with that love only a mother has. I inherited this gift of cooking from her, this desire to feed people with care. But then there was Marcus, my older brother, 11 years older than me. When I was born in 1953, he was already an 11-year-old boy, almost a young man. He was born in 1942, right in the middle of World War II, and my mother always said he came different, that the birth was difficult, that he cried too much and had a strange look since he was small. Dad never liked talking much about it, but I noticed he had a concern about Marcus that he didn't have with me. We lived in that big house with a yard full of apple trees and a garden that produced fruit all year round. I remember the smell of wet earth after the rain, the sound of birds early in the morning, the taste of apples I'd pick straight from the tree and eat right there. It was a childhood of open skies, you know? Running barefoot in the yard, making corn husk dolls, playing house under the big apple tree. I had my neighborhood friends, Teresa, Marlene, Diane, and we'd spend afternoons playing Ring Around the Rosie, jumping rope, playing hide and seek through the yards. Back then, in Asheville, the city was still small. Everyone knew everyone, and children could play outside without fear. We'd go to the creek, pick apples from the neighbor's tree, always with permission, of course, and only return home when the sun started setting behind the mountains. My father was my hero from when I was small. Every day, when he came home from the factory around 6 in the evening, I'd run to the door to hug him. He'd pick me up, even when I was getting bigger, and say, "How's my precious gem, my little princess?" He'd take me to see his factory, show me the woodworking machines, the smell of sawdust and varnish, the rhythmic sound of the saws. He'd say that one day all of that would be mine, that I'd be a businesswoman, strong and independent. But with Marcus it was different. Dad never had patience with him. Marcus didn't like to work, didn't like to study. When I was about 6 years old, he was already a 17-year-old young man, and he'd stay locked in his room, reading those horror comics, listening to the radio, and smoking in secret. My mother always defended him. "Robert, the boy needs patience, he's sensitive, he's different." But Dad would retort, "Dorothy, that boy is lazy and has envy in his heart." I was too little to properly understand these adult conversations. But I remember feeling afraid of Marcus. He had a way of looking at me that gave me chills. When Mom and Dad went out and he stayed watching me, he'd follow me through the rooms of the house, always with that crooked smile. Once, I must have been about 8 years old, I was playing with dolls in the yard, and he came close to me and said, "Enjoy it while Dad's alive, Margaret. When he dies, you'll see how things will change around here." I didn't understand anything, but that stuck in my memory like a dark prophecy. Dad noticed these things. He always told me, "Margaret, my daughter, don't stay alone with your brother. When your mother and I aren't home, you go to Mrs. Henderson's house, our neighbor." And I obeyed, because I trusted my father blindly. He was my protection, my shield against anything that could harm me. The house routine was simple and pleasant. We'd wake early with the neighbor's rooster crowing. Mom would prepare breakfast, I'd help set the table, and we'd have breakfast all together, except Marcus, who slept late. Then I'd go to school, Asheville Elementary, which was about 5 blocks from home. I'd walk with my leather satchel and my navy blue uniform with white blouse. I loved studying, got good grades, and Dad was proud. On Saturday afternoons, Dad would take me for ice cream downtown at the ice cream parlor on Pack Square. It was our special time, just the two of us. He'd tell me stories from his youth, about how he built the factory from scratch, about how he met my mother at a church social in 1940. Those moments were magical, you know? I felt like the most loved girl in the world. But in the shadows, Marcus grew increasingly bitter. He was jealous, a sick jealousy of the love Dad had for me. I'd hear arguments at night, when they thought I was sleeping. Marcus asking for money, Dad refusing, Mom crying, trying to make peace between them. "You need to work, Marcus. You're already 22 years old," Dad would shout, and Marcus would respond defiantly, "You only care about Margaret. You never had anything for me." These fights became more frequent as I grew up. When I was 12 in 1965, things were especially tense at home. Marcus, already 23 years old, still wasn't working, living off our parents, surviving on my father's sweat. And worse, I started noticing looks from him that made me deeply uncomfortable. Looks that a child shouldn't receive from an adult brother. It was at that time, at 12 years old, that Dad started warning me more seriously. "Margaret, pay attention to what I'm going to tell you," he said one day, with a gravity I'd never seen. "Your brother is not a good person. He has a bad heart, full of envy and malice. While I'm alive, you're protected. But promise me you'll always be alert, always be suspicious of him." "Promise?" I promised, without fully understanding the dimension of that request. And so I grew up, a happy girl under the protection of a loving father, but with a threatening shadow always lurking in the corners of the house. That shadow had a name, Marcus, and it was just waiting for the right moment to swallow all the light in my life. The years passed, and I transformed from a girl into a young woman. From my 13 to 17 years, between 1966 and 1970, I lived what I called my golden years. I continued studying with dedication, always bringing home good grades and filling my father with pride. I finished middle school and then high school at Asheville Catholic High School, right here in town. I was one of the best students in my class, dreamed of going to college, a rare thing for a girl back then, you know? Dad encouraged me. "Margaret, you're going to be the first woman in the family to have a college degree," he'd say with that proud smile I loved so much. He'd take me to the factory every Saturday morning so I could learn about the business. He'd teach me to calculate costs, check inventory, talk with employees. "One day all this will be yours, my gem. You need to be prepared," he'd say while showing me the accounting books. Our routine was that of a father and daughter in love with each other, in the purest and most beautiful sense that exists, you know? True family love. Every morning, I'd prepare his coffee just the way he liked it. Strong, with 2 spoons of sugar, served in the porcelain cup that had belonged to his grandmother. Dad would drink his coffee, stroke my hair and say, "You're my sunshine, Margaret. You light up this house." But while I grew and blossomed, Marcus withered in bitterness. He was approaching 30 and still had no direction in life. Didn't work, didn't study, didn't date. He'd stay locked in his room, listening to the radio, smoking cigarette after cigarette, only going out to drink at the local bars. Dad had already lost hope in him. "Marcus, you're going to end up badly. A 30-year-old man who does nothing with his life is a disgrace," I'd hear Dad say. And Marcus would respond angrily, "I don't need to do anything. This house is mine too. When you die, I'll get what's rightfully mine." Those words gave me chills. "When you die." He'd say it with such frightening naturalness, as if he were waiting, counting the days. Mom had already passed away in 1968, when I was 15, cancer that took her too quickly. After she was gone, the tension between Dad and Marcus got much worse. There was no one left to bridge the gap, to try to keep the peace. In 1971, I turned 18 and realized my dream. I got accepted to the education program at UNC Asheville, right here in town. Dad was so happy, he even cried. "My daughter's going to be a teacher. My Margaret's going to be educated," he'd shout through the house. He bought a used blue Volkswagen Beetle just for me, so I could drive to campus every day. It was used, but to me it was the greatest luxury in the world. Every day, I'd wake at 5:30 in the morning, have breakfast with Dad, grab my student bag, and drive the few miles to campus. I loved that routine. Loved the classes, loved the books, loved the feeling of building my future. In the late afternoon, when I'd return, Dad was always waiting for me at the living room window. "So, my scholar, how was your day?" he'd ask. And I'd tell him everything, the subjects, the professors, the new friends I'd made. Marcus hated seeing me happy. When I'd come home from college all excited, he'd shoot me looks of pure poison. One day, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the living room showing Dad a psychology of education test where I'd gotten an A. Dad was beaming, hugging me, saying I was his pride. Marcus appeared at the door with that sour face and said, "Enjoy it, sweetheart, while the old man is alive to praise you." Dad turned red with rage. "Get out of my sight, Marcus! You're a disgrace to this family!" he shouted. Marcus gave a crooked smile and went back to his room. That left me uneasy the rest of the day. There was something in his voice, in that way of saying, "While the old man is alive," that seemed like a veiled threat. Dad started being even more protective of me. He had high blood pressure, took medicine every day, enalapril if I'm not mistaken. He was religious about his medication. Every morning after breakfast, he'd open the kitchen cabinet and take his pills. I myself organized his medicine in a separate pill box with the days of the week marked. I did this with all the care in the world because I knew his health depended on it. But I started noticing strange things. In January 1972, when I was 19 and in my second semester of college, Dad started feeling sick frequently. Headaches, dizziness, nausea. "Must be the heat, daughter. This summer is brutal," he'd say. But I could see he was different. Pale, weak, with that cold sweat on his forehead. One morning, towards the end of January, Dad had the breakfast I'd prepared. Coffee with cream, toast with butter and jam, just the way he liked it. We were talking about graduation, which would be in 3 years. "I'll be in the front row, Margaret, in a new suit, taking pictures of my daughter in cap and gown," he said, with that smile that lit up the world. Suddenly, his face changed, turned white as paper. He put his hand on his chest and said with his voice fading, "Margaret, daughter." I jumped up from my chair. "Dad, what is it? Dad!" He tried to say something else, but the words wouldn't come out. His eyes became glassy, and then he fell from the chair, stiff, like a dead weight, right there on the kitchen floor. I screamed so loud that the neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, heard from far away and came running. She called the hospital. An ambulance came, a doctor came, a lot of people came. I was kneeling on the floor, holding my father's hand, feeling it get cold in mine. "Dad, no, don't leave me, Dad!" I cried. I begged, but he didn't respond anymore. The doctor arrived, tried to revive him, but it was useless. "It was sudden, miss. Heart attack. He was already dead when the ambulance arrived. My condolences." I didn't believe it. It couldn't be true. My father, my hero, my protector, couldn't have left like that, suddenly, without even saying goodbye. He was only 52 years old. He was healthy, managed his blood pressure, did everything right. Marcus appeared in the kitchen. He'd heard all the commotion, but had taken his time coming down. When he saw Dad's body on the floor, covered with a white sheet, he didn't cry, didn't show anything. He just stood there, looking. And then he looked at me. It was a look I'll never forget. A cold, calculating look, almost satisfied. The following days were a blur of pain. Wake, funeral mass, burial. I was drugged with so much pain, from crying so much. I'd taken a sedative the doctor had given me, and I floated in a state of semi-consciousness. I remember people passing by, offering condolences, saying, "Your mother and father are together now in heaven." I remember the coffin being lowered into the ground. I remember throwing the first flower on top of the coffin and feeling that my world had ended. During the wake, Marcus stayed in a corner, smoking. He didn't cry a single tear. People commented, "What a cold son, doesn't even cry for his own father." But he didn't care. He just kept looking at me, watching me, like a predator watches wounded prey. When we returned home after the burial, the sun was setting. The house was empty, silent. For the first time in my life, I was alone with Marcus. completely alone, without Dad to protect me, without Mom to make peace, just him and me in that big, cold house. I was in the living room, still in mourning, still dazed by the pain and sedatives. Marcus locked the front door with the key. I heard the sound of the lock and felt a shiver run down my spine. I looked at him. He looked at me, and then he smiled. That smile was the most frightening thing I'd seen in my life, a smile that had nothing of joy. A smile of someone who had just won a game. He walked slowly towards me. Each of his steps echoed in the silence of the house, and when he got close, he grabbed my arm, squeezed hard. It was the first time in my life that someone had physically hurt me on purpose. "Now it's just you and me, Margaret," he said, with that low, threatening voice, "and things are going to be very different from now on." I looked at him without understanding. My arm hurt where he'd squeezed it. "Marcus, let me go." "You're hurting me," I said, trying to pull away. But he squeezed harder. "You're going to listen to me, Margaret. You're going to listen and you're going to obey," he said, pushing me onto the sofa. I fell sitting down, still dazed by the sedatives and the pain of losing my father. That's when he reached into his pants pocket and pulled out a small medicine bottle. A bottle of pills that looked just like the ones Dad took. He threw the bottle in my lap. "You know what this is, sweetheart?" he asked, with that mocking tone that made me feel nauseous. I picked up the bottle with trembling hands, read the label. It was enalapril, Dad's medicine, but the bottle was half full. I don't understand," I said, confused. Marcus crouched down, got his face very close to mine, and said slowly, letting each word penetrate like a knife. "These pills aren't blood pressure medicine, Margaret. They're flour pills, wheat flour, nothing more. And they have your fingerprints all over the bottle." My heart stopped. What are you saying?" I stammered. He smiled. "I saw you switching Dad's medicines, Margaret. I saw you taking the real pills and putting these fake pills in their place. That's why he had the heart attack, because you, with your own hands, took away the medication that kept him alive. You killed our father." "No!" I screamed, jumping up from the sofa. "I would never do that. I loved Dad. I never switched any medicine." But Marcus just laughed, a low, cruel laugh that echoed through the empty room. "It doesn't matter what you say, Margaret. What matters is what I saw, and what the police will believe when I show them this bottle. Your fingerprints are all over it. You organized his medicines, remember? Your fingerprints will match perfectly." I started crying. Crying from desperation, from fear, from confusion. "But I didn't do anything! Marcus, you know I didn't do anything!" He approached again, grabbed my chin hard, forced me to look into his eyes. "I know you didn't. Because I was the one who switched the medicines, you idiot. But no one will ever know that. The evidence points to you. And if you don't do exactly what I tell you from now on, I'll go to the police station tomorrow morning and turn you in. You'll be arrested, Margaret. You'll be tried. You'll spend the rest of your life in jail for patricide. Do you want that?" My world collapsed in that moment. I was 19 years old, had just lost my father, and now was being blackmailed by my own brother. A murderous brother who was blaming me for his crime. I fell to my knees on the floor, sobbing, "Please, Marcus, please don't do this to me." He crouched down, ran his hand through my hair in a gesture that seemed affectionate, but was deeply disturbing. "I won't do anything, as long as you're a good girl, an obedient girl." In the following days, my life became a waking nightmare. Marcus established rules that transformed me from beloved daughter into prisoner of my own home. "From today on, you don't leave this house without my permission," he said. "You're not going to college anymore. You won't have friends anymore. You won't talk to anyone. This house needs a woman, and you're going to be that woman. You'll cook, clean, wash, iron. And at night? At night, you'll fulfill other duties too." I don't need to go into details about what he meant by other duties. But those of you listening, Those who are intelligent, you understand. He transformed me into something that a sister should never be forced to be. And he used that bottle of fake medicine as a constant weapon against me. Remember, you can be arrested at any time, he'd say whenever I cried, whenever I tried to resist. He disconnected the house phone. You don't need to talk to anyone, he said. He locked my Blue Beetle, that gift from Dad, in the garage and hid the keys. You won't need to go out. He fired Mrs. Patterson, who worked as our housekeeper twice a week. We don't need strangers here. That way, he ensured I was completely isolated from the world. Every morning I'd wake up early, even without having slept well. The room that had been mine, with my girlhood things, my school books, my dreams of being a teacher, became just a distant memory. Now I slept where he ordered, woke when he ordered, did what he ordered. I'd prepare breakfast but couldn't eat. I'd prepare lunch, but the food tasted like ashes in my mouth. I'd clean the entire house, but inside I felt increasingly dirty, increasingly broken. Friends from college tried calling me in the first few days, but the phone was disconnected. Teresa, my childhood friend, knocked on the door once. Marcus made me stay quiet in the room while he answered. I heard him say, "Margaret is in mourning, doesn't want to see anyone. She asked people to stay away for now." And she left. No one insisted. No one suspected. The months passed and I withered. I lost weight, developed deep dark circles, dull hair. When I looked in the mirror, which I avoided doing, I didn't recognize the young woman I'd been. That cheerful Margaret, full of dreams, who'd drive to college singing in her Beetle, had died along with her father. In her place remained an obedient, frightened, broken ghost. Marcus humiliated me constantly. "You're useless," he'd say when the food wasn't the way he wanted. "You should be grateful I haven't turned you into the police yet," he'd say when I cried. "You're not good for anything anyway. At least here you're useful," he'd mock when he'd see me cleaning the floor on my knees. I tried to ask for help once. It was about 6 months after Dad's death. Marcus had gone out to buy cigarettes at the corner store and had forgotten to lock the door. I saw the opportunity and ran to Mrs. Henderson's house, the neighbor. I knocked on her door desperately. When she opened it, I tried to speak, tried to tell, but the words stuck in my throat. "Mrs. Henderson, my brother, he..." But she cut me off with a pitying smile. "I know, dear. You're suffering a lot from losing your father. It's really hard. But it will pass, you'll see. Your brother is taking good care of you." She didn't understand. She thought I was just in mourning. Before I could explain properly, Marcus appeared. He'd followed me. "Ah, Margaret came for a little visit? Good that you got out of the house for a bit, sister. But let's go back. It's lunchtime," he said, with that fake tone of a caring brother. And he took me by the arm, in that way that seemed affectionate on the outside but squeezed hard, leaving marks, and took me back. When we got home, he locked me in the room. For 3 days. 3 days without food, just water. "So you learn not to try to run away again," he said through the crack in the door. When he finally let me out, I was so weak I could barely stand. "Did you learn your lesson?" he asked. I just nodded my head. I'd learned. I'd learned there was no way out, that no one was going to save me, that I was alone in that hell. The college sent a letter. I had too many absences. I was going to fail the semester. I was going to lose my spot. Marcus read the letter, tore it up in front of me, and threw the pieces in the trash. "You don't need college anymore. Your life now is here, with me," he said. And there died my last thread of hope. My dream of being a teacher, of having a degree, of making my father proud, all of it turned to dust. The years started passing in that macabre routine. 1972 became 1973. 1973 became 1974. I kept getting older, more faded, more dead inside. There were days I thought about giving up completely, about letting it all end. But something small inside me, some stubborn spark that refused to go out completely, kept me breathing, kept me waking up every day, kept me obeying his orders while I waited for something, some miracle, some way out. But at that moment, in 1974, when I was 21 years old and had already spent 2 years in that captivity disguised as a home, the way out seemed more distant than ever. It was in 1975, in the month of August, that I reached my limit. I was 22 years old and had already lived in that hell for 3 years. 3 years of humiliation, 3 years of fear, 3 years being held hostage in my own home. 3 years waking up every day not knowing if I'd have the strength to survive until night. I'd become a shadow, a ghost walking through the hallways of that house as if I no longer had a soul. I'd lost almost 20 pounds. My hair, which had been thick and shiny, was thin and brittle. My nails were always broken from scrubbing the floor, washing clothes, doing all the heavy housework. On that specific August night, it was the 15th I remember, because it was my mother's birthday. She would have been 58. I was in the kitchen washing the dinner dishes. My hands were red and cracked from so much washing, scrubbing, cleaning. There was an open wound on my thumb that burned when it came in contact with the dish soap, but I couldn't stop. Marcus was sitting at the table smoking, watching me with those snake eyes waiting for the right moment to strike. He always watched me. Always. It was as if he fed on my suffering, as if my pain was entertainment for him. "Margaret," he said, with that voice that gave me chills, that voice that made me want to disappear into the ground. "Come here." I dried my hands on the dish towel, trembling. My legs were shaking. My heart was beating so hard, I thought he'd hear it. "I haven't finished the dishes yet," I said quietly, almost voiceless. I hoped he'd let it go, that he'd forget. But no. "I said come here," he shouted, hitting his hand on the table so hard the coffee cup jumped, spilling the dark liquid on the tablecloth I'd ironed that morning. I went. I always went. Because I was afraid. Afraid he'd carry out his threat. Afraid of being accused of killing my own father. Afraid of going to jail, being tried, spending the rest of my life locked in a cold cell. When I got close to him, smelling the strong scent of cigarettes and whiskey that always accompanied him, he pulled me hard by the wrist. I felt my bones crack. "You're getting sloppy, Margaret. The house is dirty. There's dust on the living room bookshelf. Dinner had no salt. You're not even good enough to be a maid. You're useless, always have been." Each word was a stab. I lowered my head. I didn't have the strength to defend myself anymore. Tears burned in my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. He liked when I cried, said I looked prettier crying. "I'm sorry," was all I could say. My voice came out so low, so broken, that I almost didn't recognize myself. Where was the Margaret who sang in the car on the way to college? Where was the girl who laughed out loud, who dreamed of being a teacher, who believed in a bright future? He pushed me hard. I hit my back on the corner of the table and felt a sharp, stabbing pain that went up my spine. My vision darkened for a second. "Go to your room and stay there thinking about how you can be more useful tomorrow. And I don't want to hear a peep," he said, already lighting another cigarette. I climbed the stairs, limping, holding my back with one hand and the railing with the other. Each step was an immense effort, with pain, with shame, with my heart broken into 1,000 pieces. I entered what had been my parents' room, because Marcus had taken my room for himself, saying his bachelor room was too small, and threw myself on the bed. The mattress still had the faint scent of my mother's perfume. Sometimes I'd bury my face in the pillow and try to smell that scent, try to remember when she was alive, when the house still had love. And there, alone in the dark, with my back aching and my heart bleeding, I completely broke down. I cried. I cried like I'd never cried before. It wasn't crying from sadness. It was crying from total, absolute desperation. It was the crying of someone who's hit rock bottom and sees no way out, sees no light, sees no reason to continue. My whole body trembled. I hugged the pillow and screamed into it, muffling the sound so Marcus wouldn't hear. I screamed all the rage, all the pain, all the hatred I felt. Screamed until my throat hurt, until I had no voice left. I looked at the ceiling of that room, at the old chandelier swaying slightly with the wind coming through the crack in the window, and thought, I can't take it anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. This isn't life. This is not life. For the first time in 3 years, very dark thoughts started entering my head for real. Thoughts of ending it all, of jumping from that second-floor window and ending all that pain at once. Of taking all the medicine from the bathroom cabinet. Of grabbing the kitchen knife and... No, I won't even say it. But you understand. They were thoughts of someone who can't bear to breathe anymore. Dad, I whispered in the dark, with my voice hoarse from crying so much. Dad, why did you leave me here? Why did you abandon me with this monster? Why didn't you take me with you? And then, for the first time, I started to feel angry. Angry at my father for dying and leaving me alone. Angry at myself for being weak, for not being able to defend myself, for obeying like a scared puppy. Angry at God for allowing this to happen to me. Angry at the whole world. I was a good girl, I shouted at the empty ceiling, at the dark room, at the silent house. I never hurt anyone. I went to church every Sunday. I helped others. I obeyed my parents. Why me? Why is this happening to me? But there was no answer. Only silence. The cold and cruel silence of that house that had become my prison. It was at that moment of total desperation, when I was at my lowest point, that I heard my father's voice in my head. It wasn't a real voice, I know that. It was a memory. A vivid memory of something he told me once, when I was a child. I must have been 7 or 8 years old, and had fallen off my bicycle in the yard and scraped my knee badly. I was crying, saying I'd never be able to ride a bike, that I was too weak, that I was afraid of falling again. And he'd picked me up, carefully cleaned my knee, and said with that firm but caring voice, Margaret, my precious gem, you're stronger than you imagine. We only discover the strength we have when we have no choice but to be strong. Life will knock you down many times, daughter, but you always get up, always. Promise me, get up, daughter, always get up. That memory hit me head on, like a slap in the face, like a bucket of cold water that woke me from that mental nightmare. And something inside me, some tiny stubborn spark that refused to die completely, started shining again. Get up, I said to myself, out loud. Get up, Margaret. Your father didn't raise you to be a coward. He didn't die for you to give up. He raised you to be strong, to fight. I sat up in bed, wiped my tears with the back of my hand, and for the first time in 3 long years, felt something I'd forgotten existed. Anger. But not anger at myself. Anger at Marcus. Real, powerful anger that burned in my chest like hot coals. He's not going to win, I said in a low but firm voice. I won't let him win. I started thinking clearly for the first time in a long time. My brain, which had been clouded by sadness and fear, started working again. He keeps me here through fear. He uses fear as a weapon, as chains. But what if I can get proof that it was him who killed Dad? What if there's something, a letter, a document, something, that proves my innocence? My heart started beating faster, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from hope, from anticipation. Dad was a careful man, an organized, methodical man. He kept everything, receipts, invoices, old letters. Could he have left some clue, something written before he died, some document that could save me? I got up from the bed, ignoring the pain in my back. I went to the window and looked at the dark, silent Asheville street. The mountains in the distance were shadows against the starry sky. If there's something, Dad, I'll find it, I whispered. That night, when Marcus slept, he slept heavily and snored loudly after drinking half a bottle of whiskey. I left the room in absolute silence. My bare feet made no noise on the cold wooden floor. I went down the stairs like a ghost, avoiding the steps that creaked. The third and seventh I knew by heart. I went to Dad's office, that sacred place Marcus rarely entered because he was too lazy to deal with paperwork and documents. The office was exactly as Dad had left it. It smelled like pipe tobacco, old paper, Old Spice cologne that he'd wear every day. It smelled like him. For a moment, that smell paralyzed me. It was as if he were there, sitting in the leather chair, smiling at me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and turned on the small desk lamp, being careful not to make noise. I started searching. I searched in the desk drawers, work papers, old bills, yellowed photos. I searched in the file cabinets, folders with factory documents, contracts, payroll sheets. I searched behind the books on the shelves, accounting books, novels he liked to read, even an old Bible. But I found nothing. Nothing that could help me prove my innocence. Nothing that revealed the truth about his death. Frustrated, I sat in his chair, in that leather chair that creaked slightly, and put my face in my hands. I touched the desk, his objects, the glass ashtray, the wooden pen holder, the framed photo of me on high school graduation day. Dad, where would you leave something important? Where would you hide a secret? If you knew Marcus was dangerous, you must have protected yourself somehow. Where, Dad? Where? I whispered, desperate. Suddenly I heard a noise. Footsteps upstairs. Marcus had woken up. My heart raced violently in my chest. Blood froze in my veins. I turned off the lamplight in a quick movement and hid under the desk, curled up, hugging my knees, holding my breath. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Each step seemed like an eternity. He passed through the hallway very close to the office door. He stopped. My God, he stopped. I closed my eyes tightly, praying he wouldn't come in. After seconds that seemed like hours, he continued. Went to the bathroom. I heard the toilet flush. I heard him returning, going up the stairs again. I stayed there under that table, trembling so much my teeth were chattering for more than an hour. I didn't move an inch. Only when I was absolutely sure he'd gone back to sleep, when I heard his snoring again, did I come out of my hiding place. My legs were numb. I slowly went up to the room and lay down, my heart still racing. But something fundamental had changed that night. I discovered I still had courage. Courage to go downstairs in the dark. Courage to search. Courage to risk being caught. Courage to defy, even if in secret, the prison he'd built around me. And I discovered something important. Dad's office was territory that Marcus avoided. If there was something that could save me, it would be there. It had to be. In the following months, between the end of 1975 and all of 1976, I continued my life as a slave during the day. But at night, when I could, when I was sure he was deeply asleep, I'd return to the office. Searching, always searching. I searched in every drawer, in every folder, in every book, in every corner. There were nights I found nothing and returned to the room defeated, wanting to give up. There were nights I'd find an old photo, a letter from my mother to my father, some memory that made me cry from longing but didn't help me at all. But I didn't give up. I couldn't give up. Because now I had a goal, a purpose, something that kept me alive beyond fear, something that made me wake up every day and keep going. I was going to find the truth. I was going to find proof of my innocence. I was going to free myself from that monster. I didn't know when. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew deep in my heart, with a certainty I couldn't explain, that that office held a secret my father had left for me, a key to my liberation, and I was going to find it even if it took years. "Wait for me, Dad," I whispered one night, sitting on the cold office floor with a pile of old documents by my side, the dim lamp illuminating my tired face. "I know you left something to help me. I feel it. I'll find it." I promise by everything sacred that I'll find it. And it was that promise made in the dark, in the silence, in the solitude, that kept me alive, that kept me fighting for the next months, until that day, in March 1977, when everything finally changed. March 1977. I'd just turned 24. I'd lived 5 years in that hell, 5 entire years of my youth stolen by that man. But in that March, luck finally smiled on me. Or rather, my father finally managed to reach me from beyond. Marcus announced on a Thursday that he was going to travel. "I'm going to Atlanta to visit some friends. I'll be back Sunday night," he said, with that arrogant manner. He was going to underground casinos, I knew, spending Dad's factory money on gambling and drinking. "The house stays locked. You don't go out. Don't even think about trying anything, or when I get back you'll see," he threatened before leaving. When I heard the sound of his car driving away down the street, I felt a wave of relief, so great my legs wobbled. 3 days. I had 3 days alone. 3 days without hearing his voice, without feeling his gaze, without being afraid. It was as if I could finally breathe after being underwater for a long time. On Friday morning, I decided to clean Dad's office. It had been a while since I'd been able to do a deeper cleaning there. I was always afraid Marcus would come in and catch me going through things. But now I was alone. I could clean calmly, could stay there smelling Dad's scent, could even cry if I wanted, without anyone to judge or humiliate me. I entered the office with a bucket, cloth, and broom. I opened the windows to let the fresh air in. The morning light illuminated the entire room, showing the accumulated dust. I started taking books off the shelves to clean. I wiped the desk with care, as if I were caressing my father's memory. On top of a tall piece of furniture, near the window, there was a blue ceramic vase that my mother had loved. It was a large, heavy vase she'd received as a wedding gift. I wanted to take it down to clean underneath. I climbed on a chair, stretched my arm, grabbed the vase. But it was heavier than I'd imagined, and my hands, tired from so much work, slipped. The vase fell. It fell with a deafening noise on the office's wooden floor. It broke into 1,000 pieces. I screamed in fright and quickly got down from the chair. "Oh my God, Mom's vase!" I said, kneeling to gather the shards. But when I looked at the floor, I saw that it wasn't just the vase that had broken. One of the wooden floorboards had cracked with the impact, and underneath the cracked wood I saw a glint, something metallic reflecting the sunlight. My heart started beating fast. With trembling hands, I pulled the cracked floorboard. It came out easily. It had been loose on purpose. And there, in a cavity made under the floor, was a box. A rusty metal box, the size of a shoebox, locked with a small padlock. I picked up the box with both hands. It was heavy. There was something inside. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Dad," I whispered, "is this yours? Did you hide this here?" I tried to open the padlock, but it was locked. I needed a key. I looked around, searching. I opened the desk drawers. Nothing. Then I remembered. Dad kept tools in a basement cabinet. I ran down the stairs, went to the damp, dark basement I hated. I searched until I found a screwdriver and a hammer. I went back to the office. I put the box on top of the desk and with the screwdriver forced the padlock until it gave way and opened with a snap. I opened the box lid with hands trembling so much I almost dropped it. Inside were VHS tapes, those old video cassettes, and a notebook, a brown leather diary, old with yellowed pages. I picked up the diary first. The handwriting was my father's. I immediately recognized that firm, slanted writing. I opened to the last page. It was dated January 28, 1972, 1 day before his death. My hands were trembling so much I could barely hold the notebook. I read aloud, with my voice choking. "Marcus asked me for money again today, 5th time this month. I refused. He said I'd regret it, said that accidents happen to old people. That scared me. This morning when I had my coffee, I tasted something strange, bitter, different. And in the afternoon, I felt sick. Dizziness, nausea, cold sweat. It's not normal. I went to the electronics store and bought a small camera, one of those new ones that record on tape. I installed it hidden inside the kitchen cabinet with a small hole for the lens. If Marcus is doing what I think he is, I'll have proof. Margaret, my beloved daughter, if you're reading this, it's because the worst has happened. Be careful with your brother. He's dangerous. The tape is in this box. Use it to protect yourself. Use it to prove the truth. I love you, my precious gem. Your father who will never abandon you. I fell into the chair, sobbing. He knew. Dad knew Marcus was trying to kill him. And he'd prepared. He'd left evidence for me. He'd protected me even knowing he was going to die. With trembling hands, I picked up one of the tapes. It was written on the label, a 1/28/72 night. I took the tape to the living room. We had an old VCR that we almost never used. I put in the tape, pressed play, and sat on the sofa. The image appeared on the TV. It was our kitchen. The camera was pointed at the cabinet where the medicines were kept. The image was dark. It must have been nighttime. But then a light came on, and Marcus entered the kitchen. My blood ran cold. I saw everything. I saw him look back, check if anyone was coming. I saw him open the medicine cabinet. I saw him grab Dad's enalapril bottle. I saw him, very calmly, open the bottle and pour the capsules into his hand. One by one, he opened the red capsules, threw the white medicine powder in the trash, and refilled the capsules with a gray powder he took from a small bag. Rat poison. I knew because he closed the bag, and I could read the label. Rodenticide, poison. After filling all the capsules with poison, he closed the bottle and put it back in the cabinet. He turned off the light. He left. The tape continued recording the empty kitchen for a few more minutes and then ended. I stayed there, paralyzed, looking at the black TV screen. I hadn't killed my father. I'd never switched any medicine. It was him. It was Marcus who murdered our father, poisoned him slowly, day after day, until his heart couldn't take it anymore. And then blamed me. Blackmailed me. Turned me into a slave for 5 years based on a lie. The pain I felt at that moment is indescribable. Pain from knowing my father had been murdered. Pain from knowing I'd suffered for 5 years for no reason. But along with the pain came anger. A gigantic anger that burned in my chest like fire. I picked up the phone that Marcus had disconnected 5 years ago and plugged it back into the outlet. I dialed the police with trembling fingers. Hello? I need to report a murder. I have evidence. I have the video, I said, and gave the address. The police arrived in half an hour. 3 uniformed officers. I showed the tape. I showed the diary. I told everything. The 5 years of captivity, the blackmail, the lie. They listened to everything, watched the video, were shocked. Ma'am, you'll need to give formal testimony, but with this evidence, we'll arrest your brother as soon as he returns, the detective said. On Sunday night, when Marcus returned from his trip, I was prepared. The house was dark when he entered. I heard the key in the door, heard his footsteps. Margaret, where's my dinner, you useless woman? He shouted as he always shouted. I turned on the living room light, and he saw 3 police officers sitting on the sofa, the detective standing by my side, and on the TV, the image of him opening the medicine capsules and putting poison inside, playing on loop. His face dropped. His face turned white. He looked at me, then at the police, then at the TV. He tried to run, ran toward the door. But the police were faster. He was knocked to the ground, handcuffed, lifted by force. You're under arrest for the murder of Robert Thompson, the detective said. Marcus looked at me with hatred. You bitch! You're going to pay for this, he shouted while being dragged out. But I didn't feel fear. For the first time in 5 years, I looked at him without fear. You've already paid, Marcus. You're going to rot in prison, I said with a firm voice. He was tried 3 months later. With the video and diary as evidence, the jury had no doubt. 30 years in prison for premeditated murder. I inherited everything, the house, the factory, the money. But the greatest inheritance I received wasn't material. It was knowing that my father, even after death, had taken care of me, had left me the key to my freedom, had protected me until the end. And here I am, my dears, 48 years after that night that changed everything. 48 years of freedom. I still live here in Asheville, in the same city where I was born, where I suffered, and where I was reborn. I couldn't leave here. These mountains, these streets, this land, it's all part of me, the good and the bad I've lived through. The house where I lived with my father and where I suffered at Marcus's hands, I sold right after the trial. I couldn't step foot there anymore without feeling the weight of all those years. With the money from the sale and the inheritance, I bought this simple little house where I live today, in a quiet neighborhood, with neighbors who became my family. It's a small house, just 3 rooms, but it has a wonderful kitchen with that oven Dad gave me. That one I brought with me. I couldn't part with it. It's my connection to the good days. I kept Dad's factory for about 15 years. I learned to manage it, hired a trustworthy manager, and ran the business in his memory. But in 1992, when I turned 39, I decided to sell. I wanted simplicity. I wanted peace. I wanted to wake up every day without the weight of managing employees and dealing with suppliers. I invested the money from the sale and live off the returns. It's not much, but it's enough for me. What really fulfills me, what truly gives me joy, is this little biscuit business of mine. I wake up every day at 5 in the morning, an old habit I never lost, and start preparing my batch. The smell of fresh butter, the sound of flour falling into the wooden bowl, the warmth of the oven, it all calms my soul. It's like meditation, you know? Each biscuit I make with my hands is a prayer of gratitude for being alive, for being free. Every Tuesday and Saturday, I load my thermal bags and go to the farmer's market at the town square. I set up a simple table with a red checkered tablecloth I embroidered myself and stay there from 7 until noon selling my treats. People already know me. Mrs. Margaret, save 2 bags for me. Mrs. Margaret, last week's were divine. Every customer who returns is a victory. Every smile I receive is a reminder that I won. I got married at 32 in 1985. I met Gerald at Sunday Mass. He was a widower, 10 years older than me, a simple man, a carpenter by profession. He was the one who made my market table, who built my kitchen cabinets. I told him my story early in our courtship. I didn't want secrets. He listened, held my hand, and said, "You survived, Margaret. That makes you the strongest woman I know." We were married for 23 years, until he passed in 2008 from a stroke. I miss him every day. I didn't have children. We tried, but it didn't happen. And you know, today I'm grateful. I think God knew I needed to heal first, needed to learn to be Margaret again before being a mother. But I have nieces and nephews, children of cousins, who visit me, call me great aunt, shower me with affection. I have Gerald's daughter from his first marriage, Luciana, who treats me like a mother. She comes here every week, brings her grandchildren, honorary great-grandchildren, and the house fills with children's laughter. In those moments, I look around and think, Dad, I did it. I won. I keep a sacred routine. Monday is cemetery day. I visit Dad's grave, bring fresh flowers, clean the headstone, talk to him. I tell him how the week was, tell him how many biscuits I sold, complain about my knee that hurts when it's going to rain. And I thank him. Thank him for the courage he gave me, for the evidence he left, for the love he had, even knowing he was going to die. Wednesday afternoon is prayer group day at church. I'm not overly religious, but I like being with those ladies my age, praying the rosary, talking about life. They know my story. Everyone in Asheville knows. But they never treated me with pity. They treat me with respect, even with admiration. Friday night is sacred. I make my simple dinner, some soup, a grilled cheese sandwich, a small salad, sit in my living room armchair with my knitting, and watch my shows. These are the small pleasures, you know? The simple luxuries of a free life. Being able to eat when I want, sleep without fear, wake up without being startled. That's priceless. When I look in the mirror today, I see an elderly woman with white hair, a face marked by time, hands calloused from so much work. But I also see a survivor. I see strength. I see dignity. The scars from the past are here, some visible, others not. But today I carry them with pride because each one tells the story of how I didn't give up. Marcus died in prison in 2003 after 26 years imprisoned. Heart attack. I didn't go to his burial. I felt nothing when I found out. Not anger, not relief, not sadness, nothing. He no longer had any power over me for a long time. Forgive? I don't know if I forgave, but I overcame. And that, for me, is enough. Today, when I'm kneading my biscuit dough here in this warm kitchen, with the smell of butter and bread in the air, I smile. I smile because I'm free. I smile because I own my time, my life, my choices. I smile because, against all odds, I survived. And I didn't just survive, I lived. I won. I'm happy. My dears, if there's someone out there listening to me now who's being blackmailed by someone in their own family, I need to tell you something. The truth always finds a way to come to light. Always. It might take 5 years, it might take 10, but it comes. And when it comes, you need to be ready to use it as a weapon. I spent 5 years believing a lie. 5 years afraid of being arrested for something I didn't do. 5 years obeying a monster because I thought there was no way out. But you know what I learned? Manipulators are afraid of being discovered. They use fear as chains, but the chains are fake. It's fragility disguised as power. If someone in your family is holding you hostage with threats, with blackmail, with lies, listen to what I'm going to tell you. Look for proof. Look for the truth. It's somewhere, in a document, in a witness, in a recording. Somewhere, the manipulator doesn't imagine you'll look. My father left me the key to my liberation under a floorboard. Yours might be in an old cell phone, in a saved letter, in a neighbor who saw something. Search. And another important thing, don't be ashamed to report. I know it's hard when it's someone of blood, someone from the family. We were raised to protect family, to keep secrets, to not air dirty laundry in public. But you know what I say? When the laundry is stained with blood, when the laundry is stained with crime, it needs to be washed, yes, and in front of everyone. Don't protect those who hurt you just because they have the same last name as you. I discovered that strength isn't enduring silently. Strength is getting up, seeking help, screaming when you need to. I was weak for 5 years thinking I was being strong. I was only truly strong on the day I called the police and said, I have evidence, come help me. And to the authorities in every country who might be listening to me, believe the victims, investigate. Not always does a victim of psychological manipulation have marks on their body. Sometimes the marks are all on the inside, but they're as real as any wound that bleeds. I want to thank you for staying here with me until the end of this painful story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, imagine for me to tell. But I tell it because someone needs to hear. Someone out there is suffering silently and needs to know there's a way out. Now, if you really listened to me until now, subscribe to Grandparents' Tales, like the video and comment what time you're finishing watching this video. Thank you for your kindness. See you next time.